My name is Michael Foster. For the past 12 years, I have worked as a wildlife conservationist and guide at the Mfu Lodge in Zambia's South Luangwa National Park. I have spent thousands of hours observing lions in their natural habitat, documenting their behaviors, and leading tourists on safaris to witness these magnificent creatures from a safe distance. I thought I understood lions, their territorial nature, their hunting patterns, their social dynamics. I was wrong. It was the height of the rainy season, February 2023. The Luangwa River had swollen beyond its banks, transforming much of the surrounding savanna into temporary wetlands. These seasonal floods are natural and necessary, but they can create dangerous situations for wildlife. That morning started routinely enough. I was taking water level readings near a section of the park we call Hippo Bend, accompanied by my colleague, Joseph Bander, one of the park's most experienced rangers. We were in a small motorboat navigating the swollen river, documenting the flood's impact on animal movements. "Mike, look there," Joseph said suddenly, pointing toward a commotion in the water about 50 yards ahead. Through my binoculars, I could make out a large animal struggling against the current. "Lion," I said. "Young male, I think." Joseph immediately steered our boat in that direction. Lions can swim when necessary, but they generally avoid deep water. This one was clearly in distress, its powerful limbs thrashing against the current. "He's going to drown if we don't do something," I said, already reaching for the rescue equipment we kept aboard for emergencies, usually for capsized tourist canoes, not drowning predators. Joseph looked at me skeptically. "Mike, that's a lion. Not a person." "He's still alive," I replied. The lion was part of a pride we had monitored for years, a young male, about 3 years old, just entering his prime. Conservationists like us don't typically intervene in nature's processes, but this wasn't a natural situation. Increased human development upriver had altered the flood patterns, making them more sudden and severe than what the wildlife had evolved to handle. As we drew closer, I could see the lion was nearly exhausted. Its head kept dipping below the surface. There was no time for debate. "Get us alongside him," I instructed Joseph, stripping off my jacket and shoes. "Keep the engine running to counter the current." "You can't be serious," Joseph said, but he maneuvered the boat as directed, his years of experience evident in his precise control. "Just be ready to pull us both in," I said, securing a rescue rope around my waist and handing the other end to Joseph. Before he could object further, I slipped over the side into the muddy water. The river was cold despite the African heat, its current stronger than it appeared from above. I swam toward the struggling lion, keeping my movements steady and non-threatening. The big cat saw me approaching and let out a weak roar, a sound more of fear than aggression. "It's okay," I said in the calm, low voice I'd used around wild animals for years. "I'm going to help you." When I reached him, he had nearly stopped struggling, a dangerous sign of exhaustion. Up close, I could see he was even younger than I'd thought. His amber eyes fixed on me with a mixture of fear and what I could only interpret as desperate hope. I positioned myself beside him rather than in front, respecting his space as much as possible. "Let's get you to shore," I said, gently placing my hands under his body to help him stay afloat. To my amazement, the lion didn't lash out, perhaps too exhausted to fight, or perhaps understanding on some primal level that I represented his only chance at survival. Joseph pointed to a small sandbar about 30 yards downstream. "The current will help you," he called. I nodded, guiding the lion in that direction, using the river's flow to our advantage. Those 30 yards felt like miles. The lion was heavy, his waterlogged coat adding to the weight. My arms burned with the effort. Finally, my feet touched the silty bottom of the sandbar. The lion sensed the ground beneath us and lunged forward, dragging himself onto the temporary island. I followed, collapsing onto my hands and knees in the mud. For a moment, we both just breathed, man and lion, side by side on a small patch of earth in the middle of a swollen river. Joseph brought the boat alongside. "Mike, come on," he urged. "Let's go before he recovers enough to remember he's a predator." I knew he was right. I began backing toward the boat, keeping my eyes on the lion, moving slowly. The lion raised his head, watching me retreat. Our eyes locked. Then he did something that stopped me in my tracks. He rose unsteadily to his feet, shook the water from his coat, and took a step toward me. Joseph shouted a warning, reaching for the tranquilizer rifle, but I held up my hand. The lion's body language wasn't aggressive, no lowered head, no flattened ears, no bared teeth. Instead, he moved with what I could only describe as deliberate calm. 3 more steps, and he was directly in front of me, close enough that I could feel the heat of his breath. Every instinct screamed at me to run. Instead, I held my ground. What happened next would be captured on Joseph's phone and soon astonish millions around the world. The lion raised his right paw and extended it toward me, almost like a person offering a handshake. It hung there in the air between us. Time seemed to suspend. "Mike, don't," Joseph warned, his voice tight. But something deep within me, instinct, intuition, perhaps madness, told me this was a moment of profound significance. Slowly, giving the lion every opportunity to withdraw, I extended my own right hand. The lion lowered his massive paw into my palm, his rough pads pressing against my skin, claws mercifully retracted. For 3 heartbeats, we remained connected, human hand clasping lion paw in a deliberate point of contact. Then, as if satisfied, the lion withdrew his paw, gave a slight nod that seemed almost human in its intentionality, and turned away. He walked to the far edge of the sandbar, sat down facing the riverbank, and waited. "I've never seen anything like this," Joseph murmured, his earlier fear giving way to awe. "Never in 25 years. "Neither have I admitted. We still had to get him to the main shoreline. Our small boat couldn't safely transport both of us and a 400-pound predator. "I'll radio for the larger boat," Joseph said. "There's no time," I replied. The sandbar was already shrinking. "I'm going to guide him to shore." Before Joseph could object further, I waded back into the water beside the lion. "Come on," I said. "Let's get you home." To Joseph's visible disbelief, the lion stood and followed me into the water. He swam alongside me with more strength than before, occasionally looking over as if to ensure I was still there. The swim to the main shoreline took nearly 15 minutes. By the time we reached the shallows, I was completely spent. We both collapsed on the muddy bank. Joseph approached cautiously with the tranquilizer rifle. "Mike, move away slowly," he directed. I began to back away, expecting the lion to disappear into the bush. Instead, he followed me. "Stop moving," Joseph said tensely. I froze, and the lion stopped, too. He showed no signs of aggression. He simply stood there watching me with an intensity that felt like communication. "I think he's injured," I said, noticing for the first time that he was favoring his left hind leg. That might be why he was in the river to begin with. "If he's injured, he's even more dangerous," Joseph said. But the lion's behavior continued to contradict everything we knew. "I need to check his leg," I said. "Absolutely not," Joseph objected. "Give me 5 minutes. Keep the rifle ready." I slowly knelt down. The lion watched, then laid down as well, extending his left hind leg slightly as if presenting the injury for examination. I inched closer, talking softly the entire time. When I was within arm's reach, I paused. He remained still. With extreme caution, I extended my hand toward the injured leg. I gently touched the area above what appeared to be a deep puncture wound just above his hock. The flesh was swollen and hot. "He's got a serious wound here," I called to Joseph. "It's infected." Joseph radioed the veterinary team. Dr. Lena Mwansa, the park's head veterinarian, arrived within 20 minutes. She approached cautiously, tranquilizer gun in hand, and stopped short when she saw the scene. "What in the world is happening here, Mike?" she asked. "I'm not entirely sure," I admitted, "but I think he knows we're trying to help him. We sedated him for proper treatment." Dr. Mwansa cleaned the deep puncture, administered antibiotics, and attached a small tracking device to his ear. He should sleep for another hour, she said as we packed up. We should move away before he wakes. We retreated to a safe distance and watched through binoculars as he eventually stirred. He examined his treated leg, then rose to test his weight on it. Already, his movements seemed less pained. To our surprise, instead of immediately heading into the bush, the lion looked around. His gaze found our vehicles on the hillside. For a long moment, he stared in our direction before offering a slight dip of his massive head. Then he turned and disappeared into the tall grass. "Did you see that?" Joseph whispered. It was like he was saying goodbye. "Or thank you," I suggested. Over the next week, we tracked his movements. He stayed within his pride's territory but remained somewhat separated, allowing his leg to heal. 10 days later, we spotted him on camera trap footage, moving with much more ease and accompanied by another male, a coalition partner. The following morning, Joseph radioed me with urgency. "Mike, you need to come to the North Road lookout now. It's your lion. He's here, and he's not alone." About 200 yards away, at the edge of a clearing, stood our lion. Beside him was his coalition partner, and behind them were several lionesses. At his feet lay the body of a freshly killed impala. As we watched, the lion looked directly toward us, then deliberately stepped away from the kill, moving several yards back. The lionesses remained in the background, watching but not approaching. "He's offering us his kill," Joseph whispered incredulously. Dr. Mwansa arrived with her veterinary team. We developed a plan. Using the vehicles as safety barriers, she prepared a meat portion injected with follow-up antibiotics. I would place it near the original kill. As I approached, carrying the medicated meat on a long pole, the lion watched calmly. I placed the portion separately and backed away slowly. The lion approached immediately, sniffed the medicated meat, then consumed it completely while maintaining eye contact with me across the distance. Only after he finished did he return to the main kill. Over the following months, the story of the handshake lion became something of a legend. The video went viral, sparking intense debate among wildlife experts worldwide. 1 year after the river rescue, I was leading a small group of conservation donors on a tour of the park. As we stopped at a viewpoint, a familiar form emerged from the tall grass about 50 yards away, our lion, now fully recovered, more magnificent than before. He paused, looking directly at our vehicle, at me. "Is that him?" whispered one of the donors. "Yes," I confirmed quietly. The lion held my gaze for a long moment before raising his right paw slightly, not fully extended as before, but lifted just enough to be noticeable. Deliberate. Then he turned and melted back into the golden grass of the savannah, a sovereign creature of the wild who had, for one extraordinary moment, reached across the divide between our worlds. Some connections need no explanation or scientific validation. They simply are, profound moments that remind us that in this vast, complex web of life on Earth, we are all, in our own ways, reaching for understanding and connection across the boundaries that seem to divide us.